Can you tell us when you first heard about the Peace Camp?
I heard about what year was the Peace Camp?
83.
Okay, I heard about the Peace Camp in 83. Now, I heard about the Peace Camp. I remember being in my apartment on East 14th Street here in the neighborhood. I don't remember hearing about the Peace Camp, but I remember deciding to go. And I feel like it was almost the same day. Like, oh, there's a Peace Camp up in Seneca, and I can go, I'm going.
What were you doing at that time?
Not much.
If I could go. I think maybe I was either a bike messenger or a phone saleswoman, those kind of jobs, and I was dancing and doing theater in New York. So I was very freelancey, or I might have been doing after school. But I feel like I think I just came in 82, so it was definitely small jobs and.
Were you an activist at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I'd already been to Seabrook, and I'd done anti-nuke work as a kid, and I grew up I was raised Quaker, so we grew up with like Wednesday silent vigils against the war, and so my earliest memories are anti-war marches.
When you got to the Peace Camp,
yeah.
Can you tell us what that was like? What were your first impressions?
I can't possibly remember. I don't remember my first impressions.
Did you go with people?
I don't remember. No. I was there with my girlfriend at the time, Susan Sizer, and I think we went together. Might I have gone first? It's funny because I remember the entrance to the land, and especially after looking at some of the photos online, and I remember being with people there, but I don't know that I remember sort of my first entrance. I might be mixing up my first entrance with other people's first entrances, but if I were to make up that I was remembering my first entrance, it would really be like, well, maybe this is Michigan. Yeah, I don't know. There was a house and there was these wooden things and signing in and activists, women.
Non-registration and non-signing in.
Is that what it was? Yes, that was so smart. I mean, everything, it was so smart, the whole thing.
But it was very much Michigan, wasn't it? Because how often did we have women's communities of that size?
Right. So that was really good. Yeah, with the similarity with that, and other kind of, I guess, other kind of on the land activist things, which probably would have been Seabrook, my first, in high school, but where we all went to New Hampshire and, had to sign in and lived in tents for a few days. It was only a few days. But it had that same intensity of figuring out how to decide things as a group.
Did you camp at Seneca?
Oh, yes, I camped. I mean, I think I was there for a while, like most of the summer. I camped in a tent, and
one of the things that
sometimes I coveted those indoor rooms, and who was in the house and all that.
But you had worked with Consensus before
yes.
going there.
Yes, I had worked with Consensus. Consensus is a tenet of the Quaker scene. So even though I was just as a kid, I never really made any important decisions in the Quaker community based on Consensus. It was a concept I grew up with, and then in the anti-nuke work before that. Oh, I guess in other political work, yeah, and even in Hartford, Connecticut, where I grew up, yeah, just demonstrations and deciding what to do. We'd worked in affinity groups, and so we had hashed stuff out in small groups and had sent representative to larger groups for various actions. Yeah.
And so had you had nonviolence training?
I had nonviolence training. Mm-hmm.
So those were not new things when you got to the Peace Camp?
No, Seneca for me was contextualized like in a way of being. I mean, it was altogether different because it was longer and deeper and all women. But I think that I had even been to Michigan before, so it would have been like the super early Michigans, where we weren't doing political work, but we still were, you know, meeting in groups and hashing stuff out. So, yeah, all of that process at Seneca was kind of, for me, felt home and exuberant, and also hard and challenging. I mean, also the level of it was new, but the wholeness of it was sort of familiar in terms of process.
Level of it meaning what? Can you talk more about that?
The depth of it. I mean, I had met with affinity groups, you know, a few times to make decisions about an action, and then, you know, had to make decisions with 10 or 12 people on the spot at an action. But this thing that went on, you know, for a month or a month and a half, however long I was there, and that there was constantly decisions to be made about how to do things and how to live together, as well as what political strategies were. And this living together with everybody was, for me, kind of overwhelming. It was just like this kind of a million souls and spirits to communicate with. And as a youngster, I think, you know, it was all bound up, of course, in just getting to know this amazing group of women and being attracted to them, whether a desire or intellectual or mentorship, or, you know, like, there was just full of women I wanted to learn from, and conversations I wanted to be part of, and kids, and so in that way, I mean, the depth of it, that it was sort of all encompassing, intellectually, emotionally, sexually, the whole thing was.
It absolutely was.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about spirituality at the camp?
Spirituality. Yeah, that was good too. I mean, yeah. It was all. Trying to remember what I felt about spirituality. It also, for me, was of an ilk of a Michigan, you know, of a kind of a sensibility that I was involved in at that time, of really integrating kind of spiritual and political work. So I certainly remember that being true there. And I just, you know, and you were sort of challenged to think through things. What I really remember that maybe was about spirituality for me was the creativity. You know, that everything was manifest in, as well as the political strategy always involved these sort of glorious colors and banners and quilts and signs, you know, and of course the actions themselves, like, you know, the ones that were about weaving and crying, you know what I mean? There was this emotional and maybe spiritual aspect of the actions themselves.
So, did you work with a specific affinity group while you were there?
No, I don't think so. No, I didn't. I didn't like come with a specific affinity group and work with these. I really felt like I was sort of like a long-termer or something. I mean, just kind of moved in and did different things with different people.
So you were probably part of several affinity groups, or.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like in the long march through town, who did I march with? I don't know. I don't remember. And I didn't. I did a lot of support because I didn't. I remember like an action that had to do with a big water tower, but I didn't go up on the big water tower. And I also and I was, you know, I don't think I ever went in to the depot even.
You didn't get arrested.
No, I don't think so.
Jennifer, do you remember some street theater that you did?
Do you? That's a leading question.
I've been waiting.
I want you to do it again. Can't you just...
What was it?
You had a whole political spiel on, and I think you were using a ball.
Yeah.
That went down your arm.
Nice.
Things went down and things went up. And I just remember being so impressed
Yay!
by the political message that was a part of just entranced folks who were watching.
Good.
And
I don't know that I remember that specific moment. I remember, I do remember doing that. I kind of remember what I was wearing.
That's what we want.
I remember this, but I remember the process more. You know, the sort of desire to put something together. You know, that my thing that I wanted to do there, I kind of wanted to go into the depot and paint water towers, but I think I was like a little shy or something. I couldn't quite get there. But I wanted to. But I was practicing this theater stuff, so I wanted to do it there, and I still do that. So I mean, it was a great place to start practicing doing that.
You mean you hadn't been doing political?
I had been, but I mean, I was, you know, if it was in '83, I was 23, and so I definitely had been doing that with other people, and I had done, you know, I had done it. I'd done a lot of political theater with other people, and I'd done some solo stuff. But this sort of making new stories that went together with little juggles.
I was so impressed.
I'm so glad, you know, because you truly think, you know, you want it to be meaningful for the people that are watching it as you're trying to make it up.
And I think for me,
But I remember working with kids there.
Because you were so young.
Yeah.
And that you had such political knowledge and were able to weave it together with your with the juggling kinds of things that you were doing. I just found that kind of awesome.
That's so great and incredible to me, because I think in my remembering, I was going to be talking about, well, and I tried some kind of bad political theater. You know, my memory was like it was so long ago. But we all do good things. You know, some of those first bursts when you're young are good. Good. So I'm glad it served the community.
Absolutely.
I'm glad.
It was
everybody else's art served me so much. You know, I mean, that was amazing. The creativity there was amazing.
Powerful. It was.
I mean, one of my really big memories is mud wrestling with Samoa, right?
Tell us about that.
Samoa. Tell us about it. Well, I don't know how we got the idea. It must have been her idea. Right, I think of her and these kind of big ideas, and her big tent with like a palatial indoors.
Scheherazade was the name of it.
Yeah, Scheherazade. You know, and she, like so many people, and so much of what was happening there, you know, embodied a really serious political agenda, process agenda, and playful agenda. That was what was so great there. And so somehow we got into this night where we would have mud wrestling, and what did we do? We must have like dug and watered, and we had this huge naked, was it naked?
I think
Or maybe we had, no, I've seen pictures, right, we had little loinclothy things.
Loincloth. Somebody had some kind of like cat
Yeah.
fabric-y.
Yeah. It's funny, I've seen
Or maybe
pictures.
several people did.
Yeah.
And what political purpose did this serve? Did you guys try to rationalize it, or it was fun?
No, it was an evening activity. It was on the playful end of the spectrum of playful, political, and process. I think, yeah, no, it wasn't a political theater piece, right? Wasn't like people gathered around and we were trying to, well, no, it was just like an evening activity to a little rumble. I don't know if it was already like a matrix of a fair having going on, or if it was just a little rumble.
Do you remember who else participated?
Susan participated, Samoa participated, and I don't remember who else participated. Do you?
I don't. I didn't. I came in on the end of it. So I remember seeing folks muddied up in it.
Yeah, so exciting.
I didn't see the whole, the wrestling.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not true. You took out Samoa, remember? You decided.
No, but funny that later on there was some arm wrestling in the pit. So it was, you know, it set a precedent.
Good. It was stressful. You know, I mean, the whole thing was so
Yeah.
stressful that I think those kind of activities were really important. To wake up fresh the next day. What was stressful? Making all of those decisions together was stressful. And that people had gotten arrested was stressful, and deciding to get arrested was stressful. And
just such varied places that women were coming from.
Yeah.
There were women from the churches, and there were women,
yeah,
you know, dykes from New York.
Yeah.
I mean, from everywhere. There were differences in lifestyles. Oh, and
that
there
was
were
great.
bearded women, and there were things that
Right.
a lot of people had not
right.
been exposed to. The idea a lot of women hadn't been familiar with disabilities.
Right.
And so there was that whole,
Right.
we were being awakened to so much.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was fantastic. And it was also stressful to like walk the perimeter all night, or, you know.
Did you do security
I did
a lot?
security. No, not a lot. But I also hadn't pulled a lot of all-nighters in my life. And so I remember that of my all-night security shift. And being just totally spaced out the next day. But yeah, no, even that sort of doing security or being worried, or there was always a possible conflict the neck coming up with the people from the depot or the people from town. I mean, it was a constant fury of things to think about and figure out and have meetings with people about. But also this like a learning across difference, but learning to get along, learning to work together. And I think those are all things that just sort of permeated the grander culture from, those Seneca and Michigan and just all kinds of political work at that time. And certainly sent me in really important directions around just consciousness. And I was probably just coming to terms with my own Judaism, not coming to terms, but coming to an awareness, because I hadn't really known about that whole aspect of myself. And I don't know that I remember, I was triggered by a picture I saw recently, but kind of the Jewish lesbian scene, and I could go over there, and that could inform me about my history, and that was the beginning of something which I carried into my New York experience. I remember meeting with Jewish dykes after that. So there was all sorts of identity stuff and that we were working on there as well.
What was your understanding going into why you all were there? Why Seneca? Why that moment? And what you were trying to achieve?
I think it was just about stopping missile deployment was what I knew when I went there. And it was not till I was there that I learned, I think, more about the history of Seneca and why it was the feminist history of that location, and then that it was so cool, that this important location actually existed, but up with this place that needed, to be stopped. Yeah, so I just, was like, stop the deployment of the missiles, go to Seneca, work with women. Sounds great, And I was in New York, so it wasn't that far, and it was just completely in my line of what to do.
Had you been in all women's community other than like Michigan? Did you live with other women?
Yes. I had already lived in a women's house. I had left my hometown and moved to California by way of Michigan. And so I think we left Hartford with 3 people and ended up in San Francisco with 10.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. And we all found this huge, I think at least 6 of us or 7 of us found a huge flat, as it were, in San Francisco. And we had an all-women's house where we were also making all of our decisions by meeting. I don't know if it was consensus or not. It was right next door to the Angels of Light, which, incredible fag theater company. All those things. I just became all the things that I was then. Everything is the same. But so I had done, but more, or not. You don't know. Things are so big when you're young. But yeah, I had done Michigan, and then I had lived in this women's collective kind of household. And then I'd come back, and then Seneca was pretty quick on my heels of coming back. Yeah.
So were you doing like circles with women before you went to Seneca?
Yeah, I mean, somehow I hooked into that whole scene really early on, like right out of there. Some of that in Hartford, Connecticut, and its sort of sister community in New Haven. So there was some women when I was like in late high school, I think, who were circling on the solstice and doing rituals on equinox and witch's heel and. Yeah, I hooked all into that scene pretty young.
Uh-huh. So, meeting the witches at Seneca was par for the course?
It wasn't par for the course, but it was certainly like a part of my life as I knew it. I mean, I had... yeah. But it was great. I mean, it was much bigger. There was a lot more. I was meeting a lot of women that didn't live in my little hometown, and I think the fact that we were all that was this diversity of activities of thinking politically, as well as spiritually, and creatively. Katie, I met there. And I mean, I guess like the sort of ends of there was Katie, who was like the total like off the chart, off the grid axe maker to the queen, and then there was Karen Zellermeyer, who like lived in the house and typed or something. I don't know, but and who's still a great friend of mine. And so I think for me as a Gemini, having all of that kind of thinking and being in the world. Working together was super important, and the fact that we shut the depot down and stopped all those missiles. I mean, that's fantastic, and that there is no more war. That I would call that a very successful summer.
Yeah.
No, but we learned a lot about political strategizing and working together. And
are there things, do you feel you got there that you carried forward into your life that are a part of your life now?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think, most of it. I mean, I think like you were saying, there's sort of discussions about accessibility and cultural difference that were going on then have been, the discussions that have impacted me and influenced me and just still a million years later and a really important part of my life and so many people's lives. This political theater making that I got to practice there, the practice in consensus decision making, although I kind of dumped that shortly afterwards and just,
Takes too long.
Yeah, I had to just take over most of the projects. I was like, it's either tell me what to do or I'll tell you what to do. But
Radical.
but I long for those days. I'm like, wow, really, what have I shut down? But and I think that I could still go there for certain types of political work. People, I mean, really, really important. People who I continue to work with or keep track of, or
that you knew from that time?
That I knew from that time, like Karen, for example. Gosh, just a lot of people. Alessandra, who I actually didn't really, who I knew from before, but I think we might have missed each other there or something. We didn't really hook up there, but then, I just had dinner with her and a bunch of other people last night, and she's been a major collaborator as well as a lover for a good chunk of time a while ago. And so Laura Flanders, and I think that everyone's Anne Dudesky. Was Anne there? She just had a big birthday party.
Yeah, she was there.
That whole community, the New Yorkers kind of moved. We all moved back to New York, so sometimes I get confused about who was actually there and here. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think it was a very formative time in terms of thinking politically, thinking, like I said, process-wise, and the integration of all those means together.
Even relationship-wise.
And relationship-wise?
How we did relationships seem to grow out of that time. Kinship-wise and...
Kinship-wise, yeah.
Kinship-wise.
Yeah. Yeah, kinship-wise. Either we're whole relationship.
What does
not
that
gonna go
mean?
there,
Well, I'd have to get consent of all the other participating parties.
That's what
Yeah, well, we're really looking. But we're looking for those important facts because we're building this giant web that shows that each of us is through all these relationships that we've had. It's only 6 people away.
Except in Seneca, it was like...
Right, they were like 1 tent away.
Yeah,
Excuse
right.
me, you belong in this tent.
Do you remember any typical daytime things that you had to work on that you participated gardening or garbage collection or any of those kinds of things?
Maybe I was really lazy.
I don't think so.
Get out of a lot. No, I think I remember doing all of it.
Yeah.
But I really remember meetings, and I remember going around, and it's funny that I remember having I remember saying at a meeting, how are you? I feel like I'm lacking in worldview, and I remember feeling so dislocated because of being overwhelmed by being there and thinking just so hard and feeling so hard about so many things that I was discombobulated. But I remember cooking. I don't remember gardening that much. I wish I had gardened more. I think I did also a lot of child taking care of or insecurity. Registration, I guess. I was probably into that meeting and greeting aspect. Come on in, and yeah.
Do you recall any sense of fear or anxiety about the state of the world in terms of the nuclear question, as though...
Yes, I do. I think that I was... I think that fear about nuclear annihilation was going around already, and that had been the focus of some of my political work before that. But I remember there were those moments of terror, and then when we had those actions where we called up those feelings.
Had you ever done keening before?
No, I don't think I had ever done keening before.
It seemed to come natural. There was so much inside of women.
Yeah.
When we look at the pictures.
We really opened up this sort of vision of the destruction we were facing and our historical suffering. It seemed pretty easy to access.
Did you think you could stop what was happening?
I'm trying to I had so much energy. We had so much energy for our political work. And I still do in my own way, but it must have been fueled by more of a sense of a possibility of success at that time. I don't know that I thought we would shut down that depot or stop those missiles from going. I think at that time I understood, that it was just part of a larger series of actions that make up a political movement that make for a larger political sway. But I must have thought we could stop something. That's a really interesting question. I think that Because I'm going back to what one of my early kind of art, theater, and political mentors. I remember an image that she told me, and I think it was before that, which was sort of the survival of the planet, or what, you know, the whole thing. And she just talked about being like a ball on a table, and it's always about to roll off, and you just keep trying to. So I think I felt to keep it from rolling off, to tilt the table so it doesn't fall off. And so I think I was already sort of involved in that not sensibility at a certain point, like we just have to keep fighting what could take us down. And I don't know that I ever thought we would, like, you know, be in a place of safety, but one has no choice but to, and that's why we're still out there.
Right.
Somehow, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was involved in a lot of utopian thinking at the time. Just remember, you know, what was my real connection to it? I don't know. Like Sally Gerhardt and what the Wander.
Was that of it?
The Wanderground.
Wanderground, right?
Wanderground.
But those were great because they filled us with these ideas of these amazing alternative ways that one could think about getting along and being in the world. So I think, yeah, I was much more optimistic, maybe, but I don't know that I thought we could actually stop it, but that we had to participate in slowing it down.
Yeah. So what have you been doing lately?
The same thing. I make little stories with juggles. I have a circus called Circus Amok, and we do political circus shows, and we tour the parks of New York, all boroughs, and we do free shows. And that's the center of my work. And then I teach and do other smaller shows or gigs to support that, but that's really the center of my work, and it's very, very much, you know, an outgrowth of that piece that I did there.
Uh-huh. And who you're teaching now?
I'm teaching at Pratt. I teach making big outdoor political spectacle theory and practice, and I teach feminism and performance. Yeah. And so the shows are, you know, the very first show we did years and years and years ago was an environmental show. It was, I guess it was actually in '89, so it wasn't that many years after Seneca. After Seneca, we went to Nicaragua with a women's circus. So, yeah, it just kept, that was a long time ago, but yeah, it just kept kept integrating political and art.
For that summer in 1983?
Yeah.
And then did you go back to Seneca?
We went
remember?
back one time, I think it was the following summer, just checking it out and passing through I was doing a street theater. Were you there then? Yeah. I was doing a street theater thing with Susan. We were heading up north, and I think we came for the weekend.
Planted the seed in every woman's head. Everybody wanted to do traveling caravans of street theater. You have no idea what a wake you left behind.
That's so funny. And we took that English gal with us, I think.
Helen.
Young punky one. Yeah, I think it was somewhere of that team.
That little group.
Yeah.
That ran away with the circus.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that was it. And after 80, whenever that was, then you'd never been to Seneca again?
No. But I wish I had. And what's happening at Seneca now?
Well, unfortunately, we lost the land in 2006. But we hung on to it for all that time, which was a little miracle in itself.
Yeah.
There's, never been, a real business plan to make it, work so that taxes would get paid off. We were always in that third year of taxes.
Right.
And then somehow, I think that the county found itself in really hard times, and they changed the tax date. And the notification did not come to us because somehow they managed to leave off my apartment number, though other tax stuff had always come before. So, you know, the feeling that maybe they had a little bit of a plan is I feel that the land was somewhat stolen.
Yeah.
We weren't.
What had been going on the up there?
Well, it had gone into, it existed up until like in '89, I think we started Transform or Die, which was a process that went on until I think 91.
I think 92, and then 94 is when the actual records show the changeover from.
Yeah, well, we began writing, I think, for a to establish a community, an intentional community, because you know, some of the difficulties were with, you know, women coming who were not able to take care of themselves financially or psychologically or whatever. There were lots of those kinds of things.
People
and
getting away to Seneca.
yeah, the transiency of
Yeah.
it, you know, depleted sometimes the resources that might be there. But more and more, it was left to poor women to deal with things.
Yeah,
and so.
Yeah.
And we weren't terribly successful, and I think a lot of people resented that we weren't doing great political work.
Yeah.
We were more working on keeping alive a lot of the ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the hope that it might come around again.
Yeah.
But, you know, its time had come and gone. Although we had a lot of great ideas that we.
Yeah.
For the land and a mama plan but you know, not the financial resources really to pull it together, and so it was, you know, it was a lot of years of struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But good, you know. So we had started to do the projects just before we lost the land, actually.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
And so here we are.
So here you are.
Here we are. Yeah. You know, trying to collect the bits and pieces.
I think it's great. I think it's such a good idea. For many reasons. I mean, I think there's so much for people to learn about what went on there, and there's such a fight there's such a need to record the history of that era around feminism and what women were up to, and you know, every aspect of it, because the revisionist history of that time is so devastating, you know, in the way these kind of young women want to just poo-poo, oh, Seneca, like it's just those old crazy old hippie gals, you know, and like everybody, you know, so many, you know, people that are just doing great work, I think, came out of there, and it was so important, such an important place to be thinking together and sort of, in a way, getting our political lives started, as well as people that didn't continue to make political work or whatever. I mean, it was, but it was just so much more than I think people want to see it as. You know, it's kind of this young kids,
Youngsters.
the youngsters, yeah.
Yeah, the empowerment that it gave women to continue.
Yeah.
To try to vision in those directions.
Yeah, yeah.
We might not have accomplished it.
Yeah.
But the trajectory towards it has inspired and has caused us to live very particular ways.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about political theater and that combination of play and education and what's important about it and what keeps you moving and motivated?
Yeah, or maybe I'll just talk about it in the context of the circus, because it's such a big topic, if I may.
Please do.
Yeah, so we do these political circuses that are free, and we take them to parks all over the place, and each one has a different overt political theme. Like last year we talked about the Iraq War finally, and we combined it with the disappearance of the honeybees. and immigration the year before, and gentrification and housing the year before, and it's always, as we call, queerly situated. It's, got a woman with a beard as a ringmaster instead of in the sideshow, and all the genders kind of fucked up and turned around. And, so, it's a part of a change-making matrix, theater, and so it's the part where I feel like I can have the strongest effect, or also, or stay alive. You have to be able to get refueled as an activist. So it's completely refueling for me while I do it, and we think of it as an alternative media. That we can talk about things that the mainstream media doesn't talk about. And so we try to get out information, and we try to get out important questions so that the audience feels empowered to think about things and to feel like they have agency in making change. And at the same time, it's very festive. It's stilts and big music and jugglers and vaulting. It's a big thing in a ring, and 8 performers and 6 in the band and the whole thing. And so it also attracts people who might not be, wanting to listen to those messages, might not turn on, go to the Nation or Air America or wherever, kind of an alternative view is being expressed. So we come to their park, and it's a circus, and they come, and then all of a sudden, we're talking about housing or the school system or the war. So, and we try to hook it up with an organizing effort in the city at the time, if we can, so that there's follow-up at the shows. So people can sort of take this energy and move it into an organized scene if they want to. That is, and sometimes we all call the mayor from the audience, lift up your cell phones and swing them in the air, and everybody dial, we give the number, and we've talked about what we demand, something include, what is the term? Oh no, okay, cut that. So for me, it's been a way, as I was beginning to understand, even in those early days, that I could do sort of my most effective political work. So, yeah.
So given the length of your time doing this, can you tell us anything about cycles of apathy or hope or change or something down the road? We've had some pretty rough times politically. Oh, Jennifer, speak to us.
Cycles of apathy and change making. What can I say about cycles? They come. And what's their really but I mean, I guess I've been just lucky enough to be involved, in a community of people doing social justice work the whole time. And nicely through some great organizations in New York, J Fridge, Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, and we've done theater projects connected with them, and they work in coalition with groups all over the city. Of course, things got really hard after 9/11, and the squashing of dissent, and the spying, and the taking away of civil liberties. So that sort of just got us to get up and out and make more. I think it's just been really hard here in New York for people to continue with activist work. Well, for a couple of reasons. I mean, first there was AIDS, and so certainly there was a huge activist surge. This was just post Seneca, really, and that's what happened to my political work for a while. Was we got into fighting AIDS and insisting on more resources, looking for cure and care for people with HIV. But then so many people died at that time as well, and so many activists got so emotionally depleted and so broke, and then simultaneously, sort of with the major exhaustion of dealing with that, came a rise in gentrification in New York, and so many activists and artists and activists had a hard time supporting themselves. So people had to go off and get more jobs. And like, it's so funny when I first said, oh, I heard about Seneca and I went off, I was able to do that at that time. My rent was so cheap and I was just a bike messenger. You could leave a job and come back to a job, but it just got so much harder. And so I think, some of us just really kind of professionalized our work. We managed to make a work out of it. Not that the circus pays anything, but, the grants that I get for making art are for making political art. So in a way it got supported. Oh, right. And then there was that huge upsurge, around the WTO and all that. And all those sort of young people came in. But then there became this thing like with the young people and and the old people. And I didn't go to any of those big WTO, that was sort of big upsurge. Did you guys? Did you get involved in all that?
Also knowing, it was like knowing ahead of time we were not going to be able to be active in the way that we had been.
Yeah.
The creative activism of Seneca was now crunched totally. No cameras, being herded, being all those kinds of things.
After 9/11, but the WPO stuff and Seattle and all those big, those were very like anarcho small groups and people making lots of big puppet work and stuff. But so I was inspired by that, and been witnessed it. But I kind of found my niche here, so I'm just going to plug along, working locally. Working on these circuses and then other political work in the city. But then, as you say, there was a real crunch after 9/11. And it was very hard for us also in the Giuliani years, and that came right at the end. And now we'll see what's happening. It's hard for it's just interesting because sometimes I feel like it's not like it was, but I know there are these pockets of young people. You know what I think? Not dykes, because that sort of became. That scene is queerness and queer queer people, and they're doing their retreats and they're on the land thing and making political work and fairy gatherings, and they're and the same thing, like with the art scene here, it's also similar. I was like, well, no one's doing this like just researchy, anti-capitalist kind of theater making or dance making like we were, but you know what, they are, and I'm just not with them. And so I think that's true. I know so many younger people who are doing a lot with food and alternative those things where you buy your food straight off the farm, setting up CSAs, and so they're
But
going
you
on.
can't do it all.
No, you can't do it all, but I think sometimes when I feel like it's cycling down, it's actually happening in other communities. And there's so many different communities doing political work.
Have you found like grants and stuff to have lessened in these as time went on, or have things?
They're about to. The whole money situation's going to really dry up. But there was some trickle down from this latest boom. There was a little bit more arts funding in the last 5 or 6 years, and we've been finally trying to learn how to get our teeth into the individuals. And hopefully, now that we're getting better at that, they won't all start to get afraid. But I think over the last couple of weeks, everyone's starting to get afraid and hold on to their money.
Yeah. Is there life after Circus Amok for you, or is this you found your thing and you're going to write it and there's enough change?
Yeah, well, I kind of trying to put the teaching thing in place for life after Circus Amok. And I was getting really tired of it, and I was kind of cycling out of it, but then we just got actually a nice chunk of money to hire a managing director, which we've never had. And so the idea is we'll find this person, we're in the middle of the process, and they can make it easier. So whereas my commitment and my vision is to free shows in New York. But the new person might be able to schedule a little bit of college touring and some arts and education and some things that can make it actually bigger, more pay for itself, more work throughout the year. So that would be good. So if someone else can organize it, then it'll grow in that direction.
And that frees you up to feel inspired again, and it keeps you.
Yeah, it's a less administrative work for me, and yeah, we had a really fun show last year. It was it was really nice to have the disappearance of the honeybees. The disappearance of the honeybees is horrible, but we just got to have, the queen bee, so great, and big glittery fantastic bees. And so now I think we have to deal with the economy this year, and race and class and subprime mortgages and all these terms. It just grows every day, and I just think to myself, well, what is there another nature story I can integrate so that I have something, because I was reading about honey and bee mating dances, and that was like so much more fun than having to learn about gentrification, the workings of, or having to learn about bundling mortgages.
Let the geological person do that.
Yeah, let them. Yeah, they have to study the suits.
I saw your guys' immigration show. That was.
Oh, you saw the immigration show?
That was amazing.
That was a couple of years ago.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun too. Some sections were kind of long, but.
Ever the critic.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's a really it's a fun thing to do. I feel.
Hell yeah.
But I am also at the end. I am also fighting for my apartment. But so when I lose it, I don't know if I'll be able to afford to stay in New York. Too bad Seneca's gone. I would have been one of those needy girls knocking at the door.
That was the hope, Right.
The old ladies' home.
The old ladies, yes, that we could line up our rocking chairs on the front porch,
But I am filled with various images as we talk, and about your question about doing things, and I think I remember, building ramps, and when you talked about ramps, and it was so great to be doing the building and in the process of building and learning. I learned a lot of construction, both at Michigan and at Seneca. A lot about wielding the hammer and cutting straight and stuff, and also then thinking through issues of differently abledness and what does it mean and what about this and how do we get and the architecture of the land even
Right. That's a question I often ask. So what skills did you pick up at Seneca that you didn't have before?
Yeah, well,
wielding hammers.
Yeah, wielding hammers, cooking over big fires, wrestling in the mud. And even though I had been familiar with consensus, certainly I think I got a lot of good experience in deciding things in groups and communicating in groups. And
do you remember anything about the flag issue?
The flag issue? No.
Good. That's okay. We don't.
No, but it's triggering something.
You can read about it.
Yeah.
It's funny. I remember. It's funny you say the flag issue. I get a feeling.
Right. Well, you probably sat through a lot of meetings around that.
Yeah, but it's interesting that I don't remember. Well, I just have a horrible memory. But I remember more of the sensibility and less of the content. I don't know. Is that? You guys must be really learning stuff about memory and.
That's what's big. That's what we figured out right away. As much as it's about the stories, it's about how we recall and how we remember.
And people must remember so differently.
And it's a long time ago, so.
It is a long time ago.
Yeah.
But they'll remember more. We get a lot of people that let us know, 2 days later, I just thought of all this stuff.
Yes. Well, that's what I felt when I started to read the thing, and it just came in a couple crazy days, because each little section I really was flooded. And that was cool, that it's all there, and that's what's so great about what you're doing, too, because.
Right, okay, that makes me then want to bring up, do you remember anything about the Waterloo War? The bridge at Waterloo where women got stopped?
Again, I was just when I saw the images, but I don't think.
Yeah, okay.
Firsthand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's like prying. For one thing, women went by first names.
Yeah.
Just finding people.
Yeah.
quite a trip, you
Yeah.
know. And all the little bits and pieces you're really looking for. But I want to tell you an interesting thing that I know is that we were there when BRAC was the close down process for the depot, and that they did not know where they had buried crap, and that their way was to ask people about who worked around late 40s. What do they know of what's been buried?
Like
And I said to them,
nuclear
"Yeah,
waste
plane
and
up.
stuff?
Like, you know, grid the whole area and get a plane up and let's see what we get as far as radiation." And we can't do that, they said. I looked at them and said, "You what? We can't access." Like, they couldn't do the cleanup with their techno skills.
Amazing.
They were going to be asking
Amazing.
people who had worked there what they remembered about burying stuff.
But you're saying that makes me remember all of this, thinking about us getting radiated and fear of that and meeting about that and testing. Did we have testing things we were using or something? But thinking like they're leaking on us. That was scary.
Were you ever fearful of townspeople or soldiers or nighttime, or did you have anything happen?
I didn't have anything happen, but it was that fear was in the air. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, and just sort of being in the front by the road, and the cars would go by, and you'd be like, you know, is that going to be?
Screaming.
Yeah. And I don't remember if I heard someone screaming or heard that someone had screamed, you know, earlier that day, but it was certainly a big part of the consciousness.
We got that. No, we're out of time. That one's out of time. I was going to say we have 30 seconds, but we don't.
Better.
Hey, there's me. Crying. Yeah.
Emoting.
That's the only part I remember because I have seen that photo once or twice.
You remember feeling the anguish of the earth?
No, but now I'm going to say that now.
Still not.
Good. Yeah.
Fantastic. All I can say is, oh. Yeah.
I hope you can say.
I don't want to talk about it. I just don't want to talk about it. Some of the things that happen there,
Stay there.
no, I talk about them all the time. That's why Karen Zellermeyer owes me for life, you know.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about it.